Should you have any accessibility issues, please send a private message to host account or email webinars at ida-secretariat.org, and the team will try and resolve that to their best of their ability. We request all speakers to kindly keep to times and to ensure that they speak slowly enough for the interpreters and captioners to follow. We would like to thank the logistic and communication team at the International Disability Alliance for their hard work and construction and enabling the participation of all of us here today. Let me introduce Shruti Latashing and Asha Petal. Shruti Latashing, she is a 28-year-old, have progressive blindness, completed her Bachelor's of Arts and Diploma in Psychotherapy. She also did certificate in food and nutrition courses. She joined Sense International India in April 2020 and has been engaging with stakeholders to advocate for rights of people with deaf blindness in India. She is involved in right-based advocacy and also building capacity of family members and fellow young adults with the blindness on advocacy issues. She has 3 years of working experience as a psychotherapist in early intervention center for deaf blindness in reputed institutions in Ahmedabad and Ahmednagar, respectively. She is also an executive member of a Commonwealth Network of Children and Youth with Disability. Asha Petal will be the co-speaker. Is currently a class 11 student. Asha Petal studies at the Sharp Memorial School for the Blind through the Bajaj Institute of Learning in Uttarakhand, India. Asha aspires to become a teacher and artist. At a young age, Asha fell in love with the world of colors. Throughout her schooling, Asha has brought home numerous first awards in state level drawing and painting competitions. She has had many more accomplishments in her young life, most notably in 2020. Asha represented India and won top 3 in a 1-minute virtual event data forum contest titled Leave No One Behind. Asha was honored for her achievements by the Social Welfare Department of Uttarakhand in World Disability Day on 3rd December 2021. So let's hear from Shrutilata Singh and Asha Patel. Over to you, Shrutilata and Asha. You have 10 minutes for your submission.
Okay, so hello everyone once again. And first of all, I want to thank the organization for giving us the opportunity to present here today. And so Asha was supposed to share about the dreams that young people with disability have and the challenges faced by people with disability in getting employment. So now let us try to understand the challenges that we all face, and we can break down the process of getting hired. You can let me know if my voice is clear or not. So as first step, we need skills to create an attractive resume. And assuming that if a person with severe disability is able to make a resume after getting an excellent training in Microsoft Word. So he can move to the next step. That is the process of application. And this nowadays applying this is through online platform. And the thing that we need to think here is how accessible is this online platform? Is the candidate able to fully navigate the website independently? If they have any sensory loss, then how they are uh, accessing it? This is the question. Otherwise, there will be no next step. That is the chances of being called for an interview. And before I go further, I would also like to share that education is very important. And by sheer struggle and the personal effort, if a, a person with severe disability is able to finish their education, then comes another long struggle, that is getting employment. And so I am sharing with you all how how the process of getting hired is. So after the first two steps are done, then we can move to another step. The third step is about the interview. If by chance we get shortlisted, a person with disabilities get shortlisted, and they are being called to the interview, then we can say that everything is going well, and the things are great. But here too, we need to consider how accessible is that interview, whether online or offline. Are the person able to fully access? Those with hearing impairment may need the interpreter or lip reading during face-to-face interview. But will a company allow interpreter during the interview? And if this interview is being held in online platform, then no, are the interviewers aware about how to make it fully accessible for those with hearing impairment, like transcription and other things? I remember a friend once told me that it was very difficult for him to give interview without caption, and had to spend 30 minutes, had to waste 30 minutes of the interview trying to explain how to turn on the captions. Yes. So the time got wasted. So now we move to the next point, next step. If a person is able to complete interview and all the steps, then now a company hires them. Then we, this, to say the least, it is great job by the company. But again, we need to consider here how safe and accessible the environment is for people with disability, whether girls or boys. Then we need to consider about the safety and accessibility. Now, and also colleagues at the workplace need to be fully supportive so that people can give their best. And to those who think and who complain that people with severe communication disability have more freedom and laxity at the workplace compared to others with disability, I want to say that it is not the freedom that we need, rather it is the support that we want for our needs. It is our essential need that we get the support. It is not that we cannot contribute, but we need that support to be able to do our best. And many people with severe disability tend to underestimate their potential, and they do not even give it a try. I mean, they don't even try to find a job, having the mentality that they will not be able to cope up. At this point, they all need to pick themselves up and try their best. There was one point in my life when I thought that I will not be able to do my best. I will not be able to work like others. And but fortunately, Today, I am working in an organization where I am motivated every day. But earlier, I had no one to motivate me. Unfortunately, now I have people around me who motivate me to take up challenges every day. And so I am learning and taking initiatives. And it is a big deal for me. And technology is an enabler for people with disability. But we need to be aware about how to use this technology. Now, very few people are actually aware about how we can make our lives much easier with the use of this technology. And also, this technology need to be affordable. It is not like people with severe communication disability cannot contribute at the workplace. It is just that we need to work in our own space with our own pace. So, for and for the better transition to a desirable employment, it is important to have skills that can help us to prove ourselves. And having an employment in a safe and accessible environment is one way, but getting self-employed is also an option. And we all need to focus on developing skills. It is very important to develop our skills. Oh, support, skill, accessibility, safety, skills, and knowledge with the willingness to work and learn are the key to success. With this, I would like to thank everyone once again and hand over to Asha.
My name is Asha. I am from India and I am 18 years old. I am deafblind and studying in class 11 through Indian Sign Language. Thank you for inviting me to speak at the Global Disability Youth Summit Forum to present on transitioning to employment for youth with disabilities. When I think about my own transitioning into employment in the future, I think about all the inspiration I have already received in my life. Because of those who have supported me through our hard work together, I have been able to climb mountains and achieve things I could never have dreamed of. To my understanding, transitioning and adjusting to the life begins at birth. It begins with an understanding of who you are and where you are in this world. All the different life experiences mold you into the person you become as you get older. During school days, through all your schooling, you learn what you like and dislike. As you get older, you begin to recognize what your strengths and talents and additionally your weaknesses. As a student with a disability, life is much harder for us. We have different abilities. We face disadvantages and discrimination from the day we are born, and even more so if we are a girl child. We need people around us, such as our teachers and mentors, to understand our needs and wants to help support us our path to a career of our choosing. Each student needs an individualized plan. We need an effective strategy in place to face challenges. Slide change, please. To our teachers, mentors, and supporters. Find out our interests and abilities. Help us identify our individual strengths and aspirations. Offer us career guidance and counseling. Tell us about all available job opportunities for people with disabilities, especially for deaf-blind. We need accessible ways to be able to explore career path. Help us to find volunteer work, paid internships, shadow professional in different fields, attend job workshops and seminars before we graduate from schools and colleges. We have the right to equal opportunities. Please recognize our strength and help us to gain job experience. Please be conscious of the fact that we are already battling disadvantages. Please keep your hiring practice discrimination free. Ensure safety in the work. We will need on-the-job training. Practice equality, diversity, and inclusion. To the professionals and future employees, keep communication open. We have freedom to express concerns and give us beneficial feedbacks to improve our skills. Diversity of skills, abilities in the workplace increases productivity, improves creativity and innovation. And to all my peers, with the right support around us, we can achieve our dreams and aspirations and contribute to the society we live in. It is not easy, but we must work hard. Recognize your strength and weakness. Take advantage of the opportunities that come before you. Have faith in your abilities. Don't let deafblindness limit you from achieving your dreams. You are not a star in the sky, but you are the sky that holds the stars. I dare to dream of a better tomorrow. I charge each one of you watching this, help advocate for at least one person with a disability to find a job of their dream. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shruti and Asha, for your insightful submission. Is Rohit available?
Yes, Rohit has right.
Okay. So, Rohit, floor is yours.
So good morning all. I am Rohit Changundi. I'm 23 years old and I live with my parents and my 4 sisters at Ambernath, Mumbai. I cannot hear or speak from birth. I have completed my higher education from a special school in Dombivli, Thane district of Maharashtra. I did not face any challenges in school as my classmates knew sign language. However, I found it difficult to communicate with my family and people in my neighborhood. I used to try my best to interact with my family by writing on a piece of paper and a little bit of lip reading. My father used to support our family financially by working as a laborer with average monthly income of 15,000 rupees every month. We struggled a lot financially, and my goal in life was to get a well-paid job in order to support my family and also save for my sister's marriage. I came across a pamphlet on a social media group where I learned about the training and job opportunities provided by Youth for Jobs. I reached out to the Mumbai Youth for Jobs team and got enrolled in their training batch. The training has helped me to gain some basic understanding of the different types of job roles, interview skills, resume writing, and other essential skills for a job. This made me better prepared for the job interviews. After the completion of my training, my trainer informed me about a job at Amazon for their first mile warehouse as a warehouse associate. I appeared for the interview with confidence and got selected. I was very happy that I got a job of salary of 11,000 rupees per month and worked very hard to prove myself. On account of my good performance, I was provided an increment in my salary after 1 year of working. I was also assigned a new role of mentoring new youth with speech and hearing impairment who join Amazon. Last year, I went through a rough phase during the pandemic when Amazon asked employees not to report to work on account of COVID restrictions. However, after the situation improved with time, the restrictions were lifted and Amazon again started rehiring. Youth for Jobs team provided me an opportunity to again appear for the interview. On account of my previous good performance, I was selected again, and this time, however, for an increased salary of rupees 15,803, which is more than what my father earns. My family is very proud of me that I'm working in such a reputed company and that I'm independently supporting the family. I would like to express my deepest thanks to Youth for Jobs for their support. Thanks. Vivek. So I'd like to hand it over to the founder of Youth for Jobs, Ms. Meera ma'am. Meera ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think all of you may wonder, how did Rohit, who is speech and hearing impaired, get a job and then get promoted in his job so quickly? So I thought today we'll just share the processes which we do for all of you to understand. So the first process, what we do is we reach out to the community. We reach out to the community because most of them have very deep mindsets in the villages of India that the people with disabilities cannot actually work. So we have a communication campaign which gives examples of our alumni with disabilities who work. And we tell the community that if you invest in the education, if you invest in these youth, they also can work. And we have these trainings which allow them to get a job and be independent after they work. So we also explain to them about the government schemes and the entitlements which they can draw. This we do to all the opinion makers in the villages, to the government, and to all the other people who exist in villages. What happens as a result of this is that youth with disabilities who are there, they enroll into our training centers. We have training centers which we run across about 27 training centers we used to have in 18 states of India, which are run free of cost for the youth, and where companies come and pick these youth who are trained by us. Next, please. That's the first step. Next, please. So the second part of the process is they come into our training centers. This used to be there till COVID hit us. When COVID hit us, and as the youth had to go back to their homes, they all told us that these trainings, these jobs were extremely important because they know that in times of crises, the youth with disabilities are invisible. So we had long discussions with them of what timings, how many hours, and we launched Youth for Jobs online, which has two batches. One is the morning, one is the afternoon batch of 3 hours each. What this did was that a lot of girls with disabilities, young women with disabilities, they would finish their work quickly in the morning and join in the afternoon classes. If they didn't have a phone, a smartphone, they borrowed one. If the signal was bad, they stood near a shop where there was a good signal. We also distributed smartphones to the really needy, and we also gave them a data card for those who could not afford it. And these online trainings have really helped us to scale right across India, including Jammu and Kashmir. What are the trainings we give? We give them first all the skills which companies need, which they don't have because of their less education and being cut off from markets. English, digital literacy, soft skills, life skills, how do you manage your finance, and of course, job readiness trainings. And simultaneously, we also look at where the jobs are and give them an orientation to the jobs which existed. So the largest employer during COVID was e-commerce and logistics and manufacturing. So we oriented them to these jobs and got the youth jobs in these sectors, besides micro enterprises, which we do in a smaller way. This really gives youth like Rohit confidence because at home, since they are just completely dependent on the family for their food, suddenly this gives them confidence that they too can interview and helps them to actually interview well. Next, please. Simultaneously, what we do is we work with about 900 companies now, where we um, basically prepare the company to recruit these youth with disabilities. We help them with sign language, we help them with the interviews, and at the same time, we do many services to these companies. These would be sensitization workshops for the board, for the supervisors, for the managers. Then we do a job role matrix telling them which jobs, which disabilities can be placed. We do safety audits, accessibility audits. If the HR policy is not an inclusive one, we help them to build a HR policy which is inclusive. And basically, we give them many examples of youth who work in their sectors with disabilities, telling them don't hire these youth out of pity, but because it helps your business. We have several case studies which show how actually hiring these youth with disabilities actually helps their business. Next, please. Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot. We've also launched the beta version of Swarajability. This is India's first AI-triggered accessible job portal for youth with disabilities. We have amazing partners from the Prime Minister's Scientific Advisor Office to IIT, which is one of our best educational institution in computer science and AI. So after this, we put the youth in jobs. We handhold them for about a year, and this helps them uh, to progress in their companies the way Rohit has done. I mean, he joined with 11,000 salary. Now he's moved to a supervisor to 15,000 salary. So this process goes on for 1 year, and we do it through a alumni network which we have. Uh, the geographical conditions and the conditions of most of the Asian countries are the same. So we have been sharing our work with many of the countries. Our corporate services are already launched in many countries outside India through our existing MNC partners. We'd be happy to work with anyone. My colleague Swapnil will be the contact, and he'll give you his email. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks for giving Rohit an opportunity. We really enjoyed the different sessions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Meera Shena and our Rohit uh, for presenting your insights, hopes, and also highlighting some hazards. Now, we will have some questions for you to answer. Anyone can reply. And then we will move to our third and fourth speakers. The first question that I have is which article of the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities does it state of employment? I mean, which article deals with employment?
Um,
Anyone can reply.
I think we had a recent act which was passed. It's called the Right to PWD Act 2016. Uh, in that, for the first time, the act highlights the fact that every person with disability has a right to education and employment. And while it's increased the number of disabilities to 21, and more importantly, it also has suggestions for the private sector for the first time.
Thank you. My question was about CRPD. Which article of CRPD state of employment or deals with employment? Which article is dedicated for employment? Anyone can?
Oh,
Hello, I would like to share that your question. Article 27 of the CRPD deals with employment. You can just Google about it and get more information on that. There are and every country have their own version of the convention, like what Rina was sharing about the Rights for Persons with Disability Act in India, which was currently revised in 2016. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ms. Sutlata. Article 27 deals with employment, which has enshrined all mechanisms that can ensure inclusive employment for persons with disabilities. However, the second question is, what is the theme of this roundtable? What is the theme? Today's roundtable that we are attending.
This roundtable theme is transition to employment. It deals with the employment and how the employment can be made accessible for people with disabilities.
Yes, thank you so much. As we are running out of time, the last one, which sustainable development goal deals with employment or right to decent work? Which goal? Sustainable development goal deals with employment.
I think
Can anyone?
go late and go late. That's right.
Yes, I saw one response in the chat box. It's goal 8.
That's right.
And yes, thank you so much. So we have done with our quiz session. Anyway, our next speaker is Niluka Gunawardhane from Sri Lanka. Let me introduce her first. She is an educator, researcher, and disability rights advocate based in Colombo, Sri Lanka. She is a woman with multiple disabilities. She is aged about 37 years. She entered, she earned an MA in disability and gender from the University of Leeds, UK. She is currently a visiting lecturer at the University of Kelaniya and the University of Colombo. She is a board member of Women Enabled International and serves on the advisory committees of ARO HYP Sri Lanka and Learn Asia. So, Ms. Niluka Gunawardhane, floor is yours. So over
Great.
to you,
Thank
Naluka
you.
Gudavardhana.
Yes, thank you, Reja, for the kind introduction. It's a real honor to be with you here today, looking at issues concerning the transition to employment for young persons with disabilities. And today I'm going to look at it from primarily South Asian / Sri Lankan perspectives in terms of barriers and in terms of opportunities in this particular area. So one thing that really shocked me when I was doing some background reading on transition to employment is that according to the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, 80 to 90% of persons with disabilities who are in developing countries and are of a working age are unemployed. 80 to 90% of us. And given how much our value, our worth, our dignity are connected with our work, with our jobs, with our economic contributions, this is for me a really shocking and staggering statistic, right? So why is it that 80 to 90% of us in developing countries who are of working age, so primarily young people, right? Why are a lot of us unemployed? I think, as some of the previous speakers have pointed out, there are assumptions that this is to do with incapacity or stigma, or in terms of, relating to ability to perform, right? So there's a lot of ableism here. But the main thing I would like to raise here today in this particular forum is that actually transition to employment lies at the nexus of multiple sociocultural factors, starting with access to education, right? That's why when we look at Article 27 on employment and work, we have to look at that in the context of other articles pertaining to education, pertaining to independent living, pertaining to reasonable accommodation, right? And the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out is that this is also very gendered. So when we look at the UNDP statistics for literacy among persons with disabilities, only 1% of women with disabilities are literate, right? So my perspective, because that also then clearly shows this gap, right, in terms of that employability of persons with disabilities. A lot of us do not get a formal education, not because we are access to transportation, access to school buildings, right? And other forms, access to communication, access to sign language, access to material in a reader-friendly format, and so many other factors that leads to exclusion from education, which is often so tightly and so intricately kind of connected with our access to employment. So we really need to look at the larger ecology of access in terms of how we invest in the human capital of persons with disabilities is something we really need to keep in mind. In the previous roundtable, a colleague from Sri Lanka pointed out how societal attitudes of karma, stigma, devaluation often leads to the exclusion of people with disabilities from education, especially women and girls with disabilities. And what then happens is that you are also not subjected to or exposed to socialization, of working with others, of having friends, of getting factors can also then impact one's ability to engage in what we would call profitable work or productive work, okay? And I know this whole notion of productivity itself is quite problematic, but unfortunately that is a primary way of valuing people in many of our capitalist societies. So then, what is the kind of approach we need? I think reasonable accommodation is very important here, okay? But the problem is in countries like Sri Lanka, this notion of undue cost, whether it's an undue burden, from access to education to access to employment. So for example, in Sri Lanka, we have a public sector allowance, right, of a 3% quota for persons with disabilities to obtain government jobs. But often what we find is despite this quota, we don't have the infrastructure from the built environment to the almost organizational culture, right? The politics and ethics of organizations are not inclusive. The fundamental accessibilities and reasonable accommodations that are needed for this 3% quota to be fulfilled. There's also the influence of nepotism and politicization. And because of these kind of factors, we feel that, you know, the provisions are there, but they're just very nominal kind of, you know, paying lip service kind of arrangements. So then how do we change that climate into a climate that's more conducive and more realistic for persons with disabilities? One of the other things, in addition to formal and or even informal education, is the lack of adequate vocational training, right? One of the previous speakers mentioned that on grounds of access issues, a lot of persons with disabilities do opt to be self-employed in small enterprises, right? Like carpet weaving, making incense sticks, you know, wicker work, things like that. But often when I have worked with my peers with disabilities at the community level, there is virtually no exposure to you know, how to be strategic with business development, with supply chain management, to you know, marketing one's products and things like that. And so what we get is them producing things at a very minimal cost, not cost rather, selling it at a very minimal price. And really, in that sense, a situation of underemployment or undervaluation of their different contributions to the economy, right? In countries like Sri Lanka, and I think this is similar in a South Asian context as well, is that we now see more and more private sector enterprises kind of under the banner of corporate social responsibility, CSR, looking at hiring more persons with disabilities. But again, this requires, like I said, that broader ecological, broader cultural shift, right? To really make this meaningful and not make this, you know, some kind of tokenistic gesture, especially for youth with disabilities. So there is, fortunately, like I'm happy to note that through the university system, there is this increasing kind of propensity to promoting supported employment, so sensitizing employers, companies. There are initiatives like the Valuable 500 Company initiative that's been kind of taken on by certain corporations in Sri Lanka for commitment to reasonable accommodations and inclusive employment. So these kind of direction to move in, despite, you know, when we look at CSR, there are certain issues there as well. The other thing, like when we connect to the previous roundtable on institutionalization, right? Still in many of our countries, a lot of us are in institutional settings. Yes, we may be making, you know, small arts and crafts things where people who come to the institution buy it, but there's no real active participation in the wider economic process. So really, when we think about community arrangements, when we think about independent living, you know, that dignity of work, access to employment needs to be factored in those alternative imaginings of the world as well, right? So then we move on to parents of young persons with disabilities. So in our university, there is a support group for parents of youth, okay, so 15 to 25-year-old persons with disabilities. And it's very interesting, like from the lack of access to employment for their young adults, okay, so I wouldn't call them kids, they're finding safe and kind of secure employment because there have been a lot of issues of workplace harassment and workplace abuse. So how do we create these safe, conducive and inclusive workspace environments, right? And there are again companies that are increasingly looking at, you know, how do we change our corporate cultures. The other thing that these parents raise is about socialization. When you are not kind of as I mentioned before, exposed to formal education, the opportunities for socialization is minimized. So in terms of disability sports, in terms of disability activism in Sri Lanka, I'm really happy to say that there are quite a few youth organizations coming up, create greater opportunities for interaction and for collective action. And Article 27 of the CRPD talks about collectivization, trade unions, and although we don't have that as yet in Sri Lanka, there is kind of a collectivization of university students with disabilities. So hopefully that will pave the way, as it has in other countries, for greater collective activism in the wider society when it comes to young persons with disabilities. So really, again, just emphasizing the fact that transitioning to employment, access to employment, inclusive employment is so very tied to our value, our worth, our dignity, and our flourishing as human beings, and be creative about how we do that in ways that redefine independent living, in ways that redefine our value and worth is really vital. And so I think this is a great conversation to have today at this summit. Thank you. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful submission. But I wanted to hear more from you. But as you know, we have some time constraints. But thank you again. Thank you once again for your wonderful submission. You mentioned all about reasonable accommodation, dignity, socialization, and you spoke against tokenism, which is like cancer for us. I myself is a person with disabilities, so I also echo with you. Anyways, let us move to our last but not least, our fourth speaker, Mr. Neer Srestha from Kathmandu, Nepal. Neer is an inclusive development enthusiast and youth with disability, and he is a UNICEF youth advocate for disability inclusion. He has been engaged in the Blind Youth Association Nepal, Kathmandu Valley Capture as the vice president. He has been working in the disability rights sector and in youth leadership since 2016. Primarily, his field of interest includes disability inclusion, inclusive development, accessibility, mental health, HRHR, sexual and reproductive health rights, peace studies, and youth leadership. He has been pursuing his master's degree in conflict, peace, and development studies from Tribhuvan University. He worked as the organizing team member in international conferences such as the Asian Youth Assembly 2018 and Global Youth Leadership Summit 2019. Neer worked as the youth champion in previous organizations, including Association of Youth Organizations, Nepal, and Visible Impact. He worked as a volunteer in the campaign run by UNB Nepal and UNDP Nepal. Neer has also been working as the program associate in Diverse Petals Private Limited, a consulting company run with the slogan achieve more with diversity and inclusion. So, Mr. Neer Srestha, floor is yours. You have 10 minutes to make your submission.
Thank you so much, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizing team for providing me such a great opportunity. I'm Neer Srestha, a visually impaired person, currently working as a UNICEF Youth Advocate for Disability Inclusion. And besides that, by profession, I'm involved in a diverse pattern company. It's a multi-purpose company. Let me start my presentation now. In my presentation, I will be primarily focusing on the present situation of employment of persons with disability in Nepal, legal context, best initiatives, and the barriers that the persons with disabilities are facing in getting employment opportunities here in Nepal. So let me start my presentation. Uh, According to the census record 2011, around 1.94% of total population have some forms of disability. That counts around 500 people have some form of disabilities. But the WHO or World Bank has estimated that between 10 to 15% people have some form of disabilities here in Nepal. And about the youth-related disability, between 16 to 40 years old, 1.52, that accounts around 163,000 people have some forms of disability. And various research and studies have showed that persons with disabilities are living really vulnerable life and they are under poverty line. And in regards to the employment, we have some very good legal provisions, such as we have the right to employment as a fundamental right enshrined with the Constitution of Nepal 2015. We have already signed and ratified the UNCRPD and its optional protocol in 2010. And we have also the Disability Rights Act formulated in 2017, complying with the principles of UNCRPD, and we have the 5% reservation quota allocated especially for person with disabilities in government service. And beside that, we have also the Labor Act that has mentioned that those who acquire disability during employment, they will get special compensation. But beside that, there is no specific provision for insured for person with disabilities. So let me share some data, but I will not go in detail. I have taken this data from Disability Inclusive Development Situational Analysis Report developed by Institute of Development Studies, UK. And what it has mentioned that uh, the number of persons with disabilities, unemployed person with disabilities is very higher, and those who have who have worked, they are also getting less payment in comparison to other, and they are compared to dependent in other family members. And one research conducted in 2016 showed that 36.4% people person with disabilities were employed, while 54.6% person with disabilities are employed. And another research showed that only 16% person with disability have had monthly income. And when looking at the those who get just, they are also not getting equal payment in comparison to other. Research conducted by Prasai and Ponta showed that only 42% received equal salary. And in regards to the gender, women with disabilities were found to have less work opportunity than the men with disabilities. And those who are more educated, they have the possibility to get employment in comparison to those who have less education, even within the disability community. And we know that COVID-19 and lockdown, because of the COVID-19 and lockdown, more than 40% lost their monthly income. And this data has increased because of the extending lockdown and the various muted variant of COVID-19 and phase-wise lockdown. And the sad thing is that we don't have up-to-date data evidence what is the situation of persons with disabilities in regards to the employment. However, it is estimated that around 1,000% with disabilities are involved in employment in government job, but the number of persons with disability enrolled in private jobs is significantly low. And areas of employment, especially blind and visual person are working, especially in teaching, music, massage, street singing, marketing, etc. And deaf persons are working as a waiter in hotel, restaurant, and factory industries. And besides that, persons with disability, physical disabilities are working as a receptionist, as a customer service agent. Currently, they are also doing jobs like ride sharing. I think you have the idea about ride sharing, bike ride sharing, scooty ride sharing, and those uh, like many persons with disabilities are also doing self-employment like sewing, packaging, prepare handicraft material, etc. And but the sad thing is that person is intellectual autism and other severe and profound disabilities have not received any sort of job opportunities yet here in Nepal. And talking about the some initiatives, actually, the Liberation Mission of Nepal, in partnership with Federation of Nepal Chamber of Commerce and Industry and National Federation of Disability in Nepal, NFTN, has been running a huge employment project targeting to employ 2,500 persons with disabilities in job market in three cluster area: Kathmandu, Rupandehi, and Morang district. Besides that, various OPDs such as Blind Youth Association Nepal, Deaf Federation Nepal, etc., have been running on the job training and other vocational training to make the person with disabilities enroll in job and make them self-employed. And besides that, we have local governments, and they have also been distributing budgets for the uh, vocational training, as well as providing seed funding to initiate some business or self-employment related activities. And another thing is that the government of Nepal is also running Prime Minister employment project. It's a huge project that we have been running at this moment, and we have the opportunity to connect the person with disability in the job market through this initiative. Now I would like to talk about the barriers, and I have observed through three lenses: employee, employers, and the socio-environmental perspective. And talking about the employees, actually, we persons with disabilities don't have sufficient skills, especially job market skills that like technical skills, vocational skills, what the market is demanding. And that's why we are not getting employment or jobs. And we persons with disabilities even don't have required technical as well as academic qualification. That's why they are getting deprived from getting job opportunities. And many persons with disabilities are also not confident about working in the office because they don't have required skills. And there is the huge barriers for the communication: no sign language interpreter available, no information is available in accessible formats, and especially persons with disabilities don't have career guidance, how they can ensure their bright future, what things can lead them to which sector. They don't have good career guidance. And in regards to the employers, actually employers are not much sensitized or oriented about the disability and their diverse need, and they don't know about their maximization of the diversity of the workplace, and how they can gain benefit with the help of person with disabilities. And they don't have trust that a person with disability really can work and maximize their profit. And we have no proper job analysis in our job market. One needs to do lots of tasks in one position. Like if there is the front desk, and front desk have to arrange lots of office work, and because of the limitation of the disability, one individual cannot do all the tasks. That's why they are fired, or they are not hired in those positions. And we don't have a proper accessible working environment, no proper sensitization or information about the reasonable compensation. And persons with disabilities are getting less payment in the same level of job, which I have already addressed. And talking about the socio-cultural perspective, we have lots of stigmas associated with disabilities, like person with disability cannot do anything, they are dependent, they are burdened, and we person with disability often discriminated, isolated, humiliated, and they are often treated badly. So that has made them to get deprived from the job opportunities. And as I did along with the workplace, we don't have accessible roads, accessible transport, accessible communication systems, and we don't have a sign language interpreter, visual guide, or personal assistant, provision of personal assistance that had led us depriving from getting opportunities. And government has not also not providing proper incentives and motivational things to encourage the employers to hire persons with disabilities. And we have also the limited job market. We don't have huge scale of industries and factories here in Nepal. Now I'm at the last phase, and what can be done to ensure the higher level of person with disability in the work opportunity? Okay, first of all, what we need to do is we need to orientate and sensitize the employees how the person with disability can work and how they can maximize their profit while after hiring their the person with disability in the job. And we need to rethink and change about our job analysis, job description, or job specification. And we need to focus on, we need to invest on developing market oriented skills for the person with disabilities. The government need to bring the incentive provision like tag exemption and other provision to attract the employers to hire person with disabilities. And we need to work on ensuring accessibility or reasonable accommodation across the workplace and other public places. And we need to strictly implement the legal provision that we have had at now. And we need, the most important thing is that we need to have proper coordination and communication among the government, employers, and the OPTs. Only after then, I think we can ensure the better opportunity for the person with disabilities. It is not besides that we also need to invest for the creating a good self-employment opportunity for a person with disabilities. This is from my end. If you have any queries, please feel free to chat or ask using Q&A session. And I'm very happy to get this platform. Thanks everyone for this time, for this opportunity. Thank you. Over to you, Reza.
Thank you so much, Mr. Netshrestha, for your wonderful and informative submission presentation. I would like to invite our participants and everyone here who are listening and enjoying this discussion. Please participate in the open discussion. We will start the open discussion now. It was for 25 minutes, but I think it will be shortened. Floor is open for all. You have heard from our speakers. If you have any question, please tell us, and our speakers will respond to your question, and also you can share your own thoughts. Floor is open.
There is one question in the Q&A, which is for people. It's about Sri Lanka. How has it happened in Sri Lanka that persons with disabilities are getting employed? Is it because of government interventions or a result of long-time advocacy? There is a need to benchmark there.
Should I answer that question? No. Hello?
Yes, I think it is for you, Niluka. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's like actually a really fantastic question. I think it's very interesting the way the disability rights movement also has strategically engaged with the private sector. I think also this emergence of CSR, corporate social responsibility, as a kind of primary aspect of a lot of the larger corporations in Sri Lanka. So you might be very aware of like Dilma, the tea company, MS that does like garments, and apparel and things like that. So these larger companies kind of taking on and establishing even supported employment divisions. HSBC, Pizza Hut. So I can think of a lot of private companies, and a lot of this increasing engagement in disability employment is happening in the private sector. And I think you're right. I think there needs to be more documentation. There needs to be a more like strategically oriented study of what's happening. But these are some of the emerging trends that have been taking place in the past 5 to 7 years, I would say.
Great, thank you. I think you responded nicely to the question. Anyone uh, from our participants, listeners, anyone who
There's
want to add?
another question in the Q&A. What are some of the job analysis mechanisms to adapt so as to include persons with disabilities? And I think linked to that, someone has a question about whether persons with disabilities deserves special allowance when they are employed.
Yes. From our speakers, anyone, would you like to respond to this question?
Shall I share my thought?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll primarily just try to respond the first question regarding the job analysis. I'm not expert in the field of job analysis. However, uh, uh, as best of my experience, what I can say that, we have, because of the disability, because of our long-term impairment, we person with disability have certain limitation, and because of that limitation, we cannot do certain kinds of jobs, though we use our assistive devices or technology. So what we can do is that we need to properly analyze is that what the person with disability can do, what is the strength. So rather than being what the person with disability cannot do, the job analysis or the employers can investigate what the person with disability can do best. Like a deaf person can do the job where there is no uh, frequently communication is not needed. And in context of Nepal, here many of the deaf person are working in restaurant as a waiter. Why they get this job? Because they are very good at servicing. That's why they got the job. And especially person with visual impairment have the high, they can give best in audio transcription or translation type of job, because their hearing abilities is very perfect. So and in the same way, like the person with physical disability can do the job where they don't need more uh, mobility. So that's why they get here many of the possibilities physical disabilities are getting job in customer care service. So in conclusion, what I can say that rather than what the person with disability cannot do, we need to see what they can do, and we need to prepare the list, and then we can assign specific responsibility for them. So we need to sensitize these things to our employers, and uh, the more especially high level of industry, they have number of employers, and if they properly specify their responsibility, and they can hire large number of person with disability in the job. And yeah, that's all from my side.
Great.
Mr. Saidur Rahman, I'm just going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
I am Saidur Rahman from Kumilla University, a recent graduate. My question is that um, ho- as a young educated disabled people in like many other South Asian country, we have also uh, also discriminated to attend the job, not because of my skill, but on the ground of my disabilities. As you can see that I am not able to write right because of my hand disabilities, but I am able to speak and use internet, as well as I am a young researcher in social science, but I do not get any job opportunities. And what is wh- what is the reason behind it? As I as I see, the reason can be psychological of e- of our employers and our stakeholders. They do not want uh, want to want to give the opportunities people like us to express themselves. In my opinion, what can the government and international community of our do 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 to uh, what we can say uh, to what we can say to develop to 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 force themselves to force themselves to employ us, as well as trained us. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saidul Rahman.
Reja, this is Niluka. Can I just make a few
Yes,
comments at this
yes,
point?
sure,
Okay.
sure, sure,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, and I think that's a really fantastic question because it has a lot to do with how we value or attribute value to people in terms of what capacities are kind of given prominence in society. And often, like especially if you go into academia, it's the ability to write, or often when you look at leadership, it's the ability to verbally articulate or speak. And I think it really that kind of discrimination that we face on the grounds of those kind of different skills and capacities that are socially valued really is at the heart of, I think, ableism. And really from I think I personally think that from the point of education onwards, if we are taught to demonstrate our capacities in a multitude of ways, so that there's also a greater appreciation of that diverse demonstration of our contribution to the world, I think that can make a big difference. Like, that's personally how I feel as an educator. I also just wanted to touch upon the previous question of special allowances for um, persons with disabilities. And I think this is where the whole notion of reasonable accommodation needs to also be brought into the picture, because I mean, at the end of the day, we live in a very ableist world, right? And based on ableist assumptions, like the previous question kind of highlighted, and that means that there are all these existing barriers to accessible transportation. For example, if you can't take public transport, you need to hire like taxis, or and that is an additional cost, and that cost is on account of the inaccessibility of existing setup. So I think often when so-called payments are made to meet those additional costs, and even entering universities, like in our university, there's a special intake for students with disabilities because of the recognition of the additional barriers faced by these students. So I wouldn't, and I often say it's not a special intake as such, but it's an accommodation to the to accommodate for the existing inequities that are already there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. I think all the questions made in the chat box and uh, Q&A section is responded. The last one is responded by Niluka very nicely. And we have just only 1 minute, so there is no scope to sum up all nice presentations, but I just to add one thing, that if I were a man of 22, when I was a man of 25 or 30, that time I would say the same things because our experiences are same for decades. For generation after generation, we are going through the same situation. So the situation is same, and every generation sees some hope, and that has been reflected in the discussions of our speakers. And in the open discussion session, also some thoughts and questions are raised and shared that helped us to rethink, revisit how we can ensure employment rights for our youth with disabilities. So lastly, I would like to thank again to our speakers, participants, sign language interpreters, organizers, and all who worked behind the screens and made this historic Global Disability Youth Summit happen. I hope all our recommendations, findings will be informed in the Youth Charter, and our global leaders will take all these discussion points into their consideration, and our people with disabilities will enjoy inclusive employment rights very soon. Thank you once again from my side. Over to you, and I think can conclude.
We'll just be showing the videos, and then we will be taking a break before the next session. It'll be for half an hour. So there are 2 videos. Thank you.
Action 6. Address the effects of climate change.
We recognize that climate change is disproportionately affecting youth with disabilities, and we acknowledge their eagerness to actively participate in the sustainable and inclusive development. We commit to working with partners to provide accessible information and communications on how to strengthen environmental management and training of service providers, including in situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. We will reach out to youth with disabilities and their representative organizations to encourage their active leadership and participation.
Action 7. Make humanitarian action inclusive.
We acknowledge that youth with disabilities are among the most marginalized groups within any crisis-affected community, yet are often excluded from humanitarian assistance. We commit to working with organizations of persons with disabilities, OPDs, and other partners to improve understanding of the challenges youth with disabilities face during humanitarian crises. We commit to advocating for inclusive humanitarian programs and ensuring that humanitarian labor markets at the headquarters, regional offices, and at country level are inclusive to youth with disabilities.